Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to take a really deep, rigorous look at one of the most complex and honestly baffling global mysteries out there, alien abductions. Now, before you roll your eyes or, start nervously looking over your shoulder, I want to be clear. We are examining this through a strictly scientific lens, drawing straight from Stuart Appel's extensive evaluation in the Journal of UFO Studies.
So, let me ask you something. Have you ever been abducted? I know, it sounds like pure science fiction, but for a massive number of people all over the world, this is a terrifyingly real, subjective experience. They have these incredibly vivid memories of being taken against their will and often subjected to some pretty intense procedures by non-human entities. So we really have to ask, what is actually happening to them? Whether it's a physical reality, a psychological quirk, or something else entirely, the phenomenon itself is undeniably real to the people living it.
And to put the sheer scale of this into perspective, polling estimates suggest a staggering 2 to 6% of the population reports experiencing some form of abduction phenomena. 2 to 6%, even if we completely tossed out the broad estimates and only look at the most conservative counts from active investigators, we are still talking about thousands upon thousands of meticulously documented cases. So this isn't just a handful of isolated weird stories. It's a massive, consistent data set, and it literally demands a scientific explanation.
Okay, let's dive into this scientific dossier. Here's our roadmap. Number 1, the abduction phenomenon. 2, tricks of the mind. 3, the sleep connection. 4, environmental stressors. 5, the extraterrestrial hypothesis. And finally, 6, a multi-causal mystery.
Section 1, the abduction phenomenon, evaluating evidence. To properly investigate reports that are this subjective and, frankly, bizarre, we really need a foundational ground rule.
And that brings us to the rule of parsimony, which you probably know better as Occam's razor. This is going to be our measuring stick throughout this whole explainer. Basically, the rule states that unnecessary assumptions shouldn't be introduced when you're interpreting a phenomenon. What that means for us is that we have to rigorously test the earthly, prosaic, boring, psychological explanations first before we take a massive leap to cosmic or extraterrestrial conclusions. The evidence has to dictate the assumptions, not the other way around.
Section 2. Tricks of the mind, psychological theories. Let's look at those earthly explanations. A lot of folks just assume these stories are hoaxes.
But the data actually shows that these experiencers rarely seek fame, and they don't fit the clinical profile for people who fake illnesses. So if they aren't lying, are their minds playing tricks on them? Well, most of these memories just pop up spontaneously. Actually, scratch that. Very few do. The vast majority of abduction accounts are retrieved through hypnosis. And here's the catch. Lab experiments consistently show that hypnosis is really good at generating pseudo-memories, basically fake memories, while giving the person a false sense of confidence that those memories are totally real. This heavy reliance on hypnosis throws a pretty big scientific shadow over these accounts.
Now, you'd probably guess these folks are just highly imaginative daydreamers, right? Wrong. Formal testing of something called fantasy proneness absolutely debunks that stereotype. Intense UFO close encounter subjects actually score right smack in the normal mid-range. Their scores are virtually identical to the control group. They aren't blurring reality and fantasy at all. By all empirical measures, their imaginations are completely average.
And this brilliantly highlights a wider psychological reality. Over the years, plenty of theories have suggested these experiences stem from deep psychological issues. Things like schizophrenic tendencies or masochistic escape from self-fantasies. Yet, when researchers administer standardized clinical tests, the results repeatedly prove that abduction experiencers are clinically normal. In fact, a lot of the time they show higher self-esteem and lower perceptual aberrations than the control groups. No way, right? But it's true. They're simply not psychologically disturbed.
Section 3. The sleep connection. Sleep paralysis. So if the mind is totally healthy, could this just be about how our bodies shut down to sleep?
A huge number of abductions happen at night, and this perfectly mirrors a well-documented cross-cultural sleep paralysis event historically called the old hag phenomenon. Picture this, you're waking up or just falling asleep, you see a shadowy figure enter the room, you feel a crushing pressure on your chest, and you are totally, terrifyingly unable to move or make a sound. These physical sensations map flawlessly onto the first few moments of a classic alien encounter. But does that explain the complex, hours-long medical procedures that supposedly happen after? That part is still highly debated.
Section 4. Environmental stressors, earthly forces. If it's not a sleep anomaly, maybe we need to look at the environment around us.
Some researchers think unseen earthly forces like tectonic strain or extreme electromagnetic pollution are physically messing with people's brains. Think of tectonic strain like a giant geological battery charging up underground before an earthquake. The theory is that this intense energy buildup could release electromagnetic waves that physically alter the temporal lobes in our brains, causing localized seizures. This could trigger vivid hallucinations and a profound, creepy feeling that someone is in the room with you. It's a parsimonious theory for sure, but frankly, the specific physics required for deep Earth tectonic strain to reach into your suburban bedroom and alter your brain state, that remains largely unproven.
Section 5. The extraterrestrial hypothesis. Evaluating alien contact. If we've tested hoaxes, sleep paralysis, and tectonic strain and found them all lacking, we have to impartially evaluate the most provocative theory of all. I know exactly what the immediate skeptical response is here. It's a classic question straight from the source text. Well, why don't they just land on the White House lawn? People use this to completely dismiss the secretive, covert nature of abductions. The assumption is that if intelligent aliens were actually visiting, they'd make a big, public arrival, not sneak into our bedrooms at 3 a.m.
But scientifically speaking, that dismissal relies on a logical trap called the anthropomorphic fallacy. Let's break it down. First, you're assuming alien behavior matches human motives. Because of that, you expect overt contact rather than, say, covert scientific study or an agenda we can't even comprehend. And finally, you end up dismissing actual empirical data based entirely on human bias. We literally can't apply human logic to potential non-human entities. It's scientifically flawed reasoning.
So what keeps the ET hypothesis alive among serious researchers? The data. We see this extraordinary consistency in narrative details across global reports, weird little details that never make it into the media. We see clinical symptoms of real PTSD. We see unexplained physical stigmata, like those hidden physical scoop-marked scars people have had since childhood. But the biggest hurdle for skeptics: shared, multiple witness cases. Take the 4 guys camping in Allagash, Maine. They were out in a canoe on a remote lake, and they simultaneously experienced and later independently reported the exact same abduction event. Cases with multiple simultaneous witnesses like that are absolutely the greatest challenge to simple psychological explanations.
Section 6. A multi-causal mystery, synthesizing evidence. So how do we make sense of all this conflicting data? As we've seen, one single blanket explanation just fails to cover all the facts. You might be tempted to say, okay, well, it's just a mix of everything, but that runs face first into a statistical wall called the conjunction rule. You can't just casually stack theories to explain away the phenomenon. You can't say a single experiencer is highly fantasy-prone and has a rare sleep disorder and was perfectly positioned over a weird electromagnetic field. The conjunction rule proves statistically that overlapping causes can only account for a tiny, tiny fraction of the total cases. The math literally does not support throwing a bunch of prosaic explanations into a blender and calling the case closed.
So, despite our absolute best psychological science, our clinical tests, and our environmental theories, the chains of evidence remain complete. Not a single earthly theory has successfully closed this case, which leaves us with a really provocative reality to ponder. If even one of these thousands of meticulously documented cases defies all earthly explanation, what exactly is waiting for us in the dark?